Literature is often treated like a moral vaccine. Read the right books, encounter the right truths, and you'll be protected from certain mistakes. In this view, novels don't just describe human failure, they prevent it. But Crime and Punishment quietly destroys that assumption. It gives us a mind that understands moral arguments in exquisite detail, and still cannot accept what they mean. That's what makes it such a strange and revealing test case. What would happen if a character were forced to confront his own life, not as experience, but as literature? Raskolnikov is the perfect subject for this experiment precisely because he isn't naive. He's intelligent, self-analytical, obsessed with explaining himself through ideas. He doesn't stumble into murder blindly. He theorizes his way into it. The crime isn't just an action. It's a hypothesis, an attempt to prove something about who he is and what kind of person he might be allowed to become. If any character could read a novel about himself and extract the lesson, it would be him. And yet, Fyodor Dostoevsky doesn't write Crime and Punishment as a warning sign posted in advance. He writes it like a post-mortem. The novel doesn't argue someone like Raskolnikov out of murder. It dissects what happens after the argument has already failed, which raises a deeper problem. Is moral insight something you can learn safely? Or is it something you can only pay for? That's the question this essay explores. Not whether Crime and Punishment condemns Raskolnikov's crime, but whether the kind of mind capable of committing it could ever truly be stopped by reading the book at all. The tempting answer is no. After all, Crime and Punishment is one of the most thorough psychological autopsies of murder ever written. It follows the act not with suspense, but with decay, confusion, isolation, self-loathing, the slow collapse of thought itself. Surely a man who read this book carefully would never raise an axe. But Raskolnikov is not a man. He is a theory wearing a human body, and theories do not read novels in good faith. Raskolnikov commits his crime not out of ignorance or desperation alone, but as an experiment. He wants to know whether he belongs to what he calls the extraordinary class of men, those who, like Napoleon, may step over moral law in service of a higher purpose. As he writes in his article, such men have the right to transgress because their idea may save humanity. The murder is meant to clarify his identity. The problem is that Crime and Punishment does not argue against this theory in the way Raskolnikov expects. It does not refute it logically. It does not present a superior ethical system. It does not debate him. Instead, it sabotages the experiment. What Dostoevsky shows, relentlessly, is that the act does not produce clarity. It produces fragmentation. Raskolnikov does not emerge stronger or freer. He emerges divided. As the narrator observes, after the murder, he could not understand what was happening to him, and his thoughts become confused, broken, disconnected. This is crucial. The punishment is not external. It arrives before the police, before the trial, before Siberia. Punishment is already at work inside him, embedded in consciousness itself. But here is where the dangerous misunderstanding begins. Raskolnikov does not believe this applies to him. He believes the character in the novel fails, not because the theory is wrong, but because the man is weak. He already anticipates this defense in his own thoughts. Suffering and pain are always obligatory for a wide consciousness and a deep heart. In other words, suffering does not disprove greatness. It may even confirm it. From this angle, Crime and Punishment does not deter the crime. It provides a negative case study, a failed attempt, something to surpass, This is why the novel is so unsettling. Dostoevsky does not assume that exposure to moral truth is enough to save someone. He repeatedly shows that intelligence can coexist with profound self-deception. Raskolnikov understands arguments. What he lacks is humility, the willingness to accept that he is not exempt. The book demands that humility, but it cannot force it. Consider Sonia. She never refutes Raskolnikov's theory. She simply lives in a way that makes it irrelevant. When she tells him to bow at the crossroads and confess, "Go at once, this very minute. Kiss the earth you have defiled," she offers no abstraction, only submission. And this is precisely why he recoils. Her position cannot be outthought. It can only be accepted or rejected. And he rejects it. Not because it is weak, but because it requires the one thing his identity cannot tolerate: surrender. This leads to an uncomfortable conclusion. If Raskolnikov truly understood crime and punishment, the murder would become impossible. Not because it is immoral, but because it would no longer mean what he wants it to mean. It would no longer promise proof of greatness. It would only promise disintegration. But that understanding is unavailable to him before the crime. Dostoevsky suggests something far more disturbing than a moral lesson: that certain illusions cannot be dismantled by reason alone. Raskolnikov himself admits this when he finally confesses, not to Sonia, but to himself. "Did I kill the old woman? I killed myself." The irony is brutal. The very insight required to learn from crime and punishment is the insight Raskolnikov gains only by committing the crime. The book does not prevent catastrophe. It explains why catastrophe is sometimes the only teacher left. So would Raskolnikov have committed the murder if he had read Crime and Punishment? Possibly not. But the more disturbing answer is this: reading the book might not stop him. It might only ensure that when he kills, he understands exactly what he is destroying. And that understanding does not save him. It only makes the punishment inescapable. Which brings me to the question I can't shake. If insight only comes after catastrophe, how many of our deepest beliefs could we actually abandon without first destroying something we care about?